two major banks have expressed concern that the U.S. may be heading into something called stagflation. Illegal Jordanian migrants who tried to breach Quantico base allowed to walk free after posting bail. Are soft on crime policies jacking up car insurance premiums? This is Dr. David D. Shine. Thanks for joining us for the special episode of Saving America with our weekly update. And our starting point today is a disappointing July jobs report that came out late last week, showing only 114,000 jobs were created versus over 175,000 new jobs expected. The unemployment rate surged to 4.3%, the highest since October of 2021. On top of that, factory orders fell 3.3%, according to the U.S. Commerce Department. This was reported to be the largest decline in the Manufacturing and Producers Index since the COVID pandemic in the spring of 2020. In response, the stock market crashed, not just in New York, but around the world. It is too soon to tell if this will be similar to the crash of 2007-08, where the market lost half of its value. Biden said he wants to implement rent controls due to the high cost of housing. This is the socialist approach to problems. Does anyone remember what happened to the USSR? Yes, it collapsed around 1990. Back in the USSR. Biden also claimed that the high cost for goods was due to greed by manufacturers and retailers, despite the dramatic increase that they experienced in raw costs caused by irresponsible federal spending by his administration. Speaking of spending, how about the feds giving $8.5 billion to Intel? And then Intel just announced it's laying off 15,000 employees. The U.S. may be heading into something called stagflation, the period where unemployment is high and economic activity is low, but the economy is still experiencing inflation. Communist China spies on the Americans and engages in transnational repression. This is important, folks, because it violates the sovereignty of the United States. The Department of Justice has unsealed an indictment surrounding an alleged Chinese spy in Florida who has been feeding the Chinese Communist Party, the CCP, intelligence for 12 years. The report came from NTD, which is a network for free Chinese. Their source was the executive director of Falun Dafa Information Center, Levi Bodie, and former U.S. defense official and attaché to China, retired Brigadier General Robert Spalding. They say that the CCP is infiltrating every sphere of American life and targeting all dissidents. Illegal Jordanian migrants who tried to breach Quantico base allowed to walk free after posting bail. Located just south of Washington, D.C., Quantico is the training base for the Marines, including the unit that flies the Marine One presidential helicopter. It is a secure facility. You do not get in there without an appointment and plenty of ID. I know I have been there on official business. So these two illegals allegedly just wander onto the base, and all that happens is that they were allowed to post bond in their ICE cases, with one set at 15 grand and the other set at 10 grand, and were released. What? Can this really have happened? Why are they not locked up down in Gitmo? Inquiring minds need to know. I'm not done talking about the failures of the Biden-Harris administration. A headline from Breitbart: Kamala Harris failed to connect one person with high-speed internet with $42.5 billion from the infamous infrastructure bill. Harris was supposed to lead the Biden-Harris rural broadband expansion. It has failed to connect one person with high-speed internet despite having $42.5 billion from this ludicrous infrastructure bill. Of course, I assume she will deny this if she ever shows up in the public, like she denied being border czar. Hey, it's only been 3.5 years, folks. DHS pauses the controversial migrant flight program amid alleged fraud. DHS, that's the Department of Homeland Security, the folks that are supposed to be keeping us safe, confirmed that this program is temporarily on hold out of an abundance of caution. Internal report found, get this, massive fraud in the application process. At least 494,799 migrants from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela have been allowed entry into the country under the administration's parole program. The information indicates perhaps that as many as 25% of the forms have false or incorrect information. Really? Florida and Texas have received the most parole participants. Our soft on crime policies jacking up car insurance premiums. I doubt anyone living in a large or even medium city in the U.S. feels like their auto insurance rates are reasonable. I certainly don't feel that way. The last few years have been especially expensive. What has happened during this time? Well, soft on crime Soros DAs, as they're called, have taken over control of the criminal justice system in most major metropolitan areas. Not surprisingly, car thefts have surged to their highest levels ever reported. Over the past 2 years, auto insurance prices have surged by an average of 27% nationally. That's an increase from 127 a month in 2022 to 161 a month by the end of 2023. A McKinsey study, McKinsey, of course, being a big, infamous management consulting firm, generally pretty well regarded, produced a study in 2015 that said that DEI was important because there was a link between profits and executive racial and gender diversity. I want to start my commentary with a clear statement. I regard diversity as the secret to the success of America. The term that I grew up with was the American melting pot. People from all over the world came here and melded together to create something really special. I salute diversity in my first book, Decline of America. I also feel that many corporate boards of directors have failed to steer corporations in the right direction due to a lack of diversity. Mostly, it's a bunch of members of the old boys club controlling the action. Having sharp people with different views would be a real benefit. So the problem is not the goal. It is the approach. The approach tied to the McKinsey report was labeled DEI. So just being different was more important than whether you were a really sharp person who could bring something new to the table. And its application was so ragged that it failed not only to identify talent, but actually discriminated against some less favored minorities and others who were more favored. So discrimination with a different wrapper. In fact, the article mentions BlackRock, which was full on board with DEI, including a fund that it operated. What happened? The fund underperformed the market. Big surprise there. I do not want to focus on diversity to the end. I just want it to be rational. Merit is number one. Having diversity is a bonus. Speaking of irrational discrimination, there have been disclosures recently about something called NewsGuard. NewsGuard is supposed to be the arbiter of fake news. They evaluate various publication sources for their veracity. The problem, of course, is the scumballs doing the determinations are whack lefties. The problem here is that major corporations have been relying on these credibility ratings. That means that the publication source is conservative. They are more likely to get bad ratings by NewsGuard and therefore will not get the advertising revenue that they need to survive. I encourage all to be skeptical of not just alleged news sources, but also of any operation claiming to verify those news sources. Chevron is leaving California for Houston by the end of this year. According to the report, Chevron has about 7,000 employees here in Houston already and about 2,000 at its headquarters in San Ramon, California. Chevron, of course, is one of the major oil companies in the world. This is a very significant development. I want to extend a warm welcome to the Chevron brass. They will find a pro-business environment here and, at least at the moment, some less expensive housing. I am sure the employees will like the fact that there's no state income tax. Thank you very much for joining me, Dr. David D. Shine, for the special episode of Saving America. If you've enjoyed it, subscribe on your favorite platform.